And joining us on today's Present Arms is a first. We have a very first Wargaming staff member. It's Hypnotic, the lead player development specialist. How's it going, Hypnotic?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. So I'm not sure if a lot of people know or not, you are the man behind the curtain when it comes to Fantasy League. So I was wondering if you could fill in the folks on kind of the algorithm behind Fantasy League, kind of what makes the points, what gets you the most points, what gets you the least points, that kind of thing.
All right, well, I'd be happy to. So, uh, start, I guess, in order of things that give you the most. There's things such as damage dealt. That's always a big one. You get people who walk away with. I think in last night's battles, we had a couple of guys that were near 4,000 damage, and I know you personally had a very high damaged game,
Yes,
which
I
got
had
you
a
quite a few points. That's one of the big ones. There's also things such as capture and defense. Obviously, capturing and defending a base is critical in a match. It could be the difference between winning and losing it. Um, there are things that are kind of meant to balance out tanks of different tiers, such as damage ratio. That always is a big factor, and that can even be as high as 30 points depending on how effective you are. So there's a lot of big things like that that can make differences, and then there's also a bunch of smaller stuff like uh, there's a win bonus, but it's not too much. There's things like uh, distance traveled, which is kind of a little quirky stat, but a tank that's moving around a lot, getting scout, while they're also getting points for spotting those tanks. They the more that they move around and the more flex that they show, they're getting a few little bonus points here and there.
Huh, that's good. That's good to know. I guess I'll just have to drive around in circles from now on.
That'll work.
Uh, and
Now
so
you
you
know why
did
Simp
mention.
always did it.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I said now you know why Simp always did it.
And so you did mention that there is a slight modifier for lower tiers. Is that the only thing there is that kind of balances out players who play a lot of tier sixes and tier sevens like I do?
Um, within the actual formula for scoring, there are little things like the damage ratio is the biggest one that kind of balances them out. Preseason, they were balanced to a tier six would be about 75% scoring of what a tier eight does.
Okay.
And obviously, tier eights are going to be the biggest factor in a battle, so that kind of makes sense. But we do still want to kind of balance them out a little bit. Now, back when this was a 742, it was an even bigger discrepancy, and the tier ones were able to be balanced up to about, I think, 48%
Wow. Okay.
scoring by just different things in the formula. There is no actual modifier to the scores based on what tier you're in. It's the actual elements that make up your score are still the same.
Okay. And I know a couple people have been asking me, in the future, will they be able to sort out people's stats by what tiers they play at? I don't believe you can currently do that right now.
Yeah, you can kind of do that right now. There are one of the things in the player table is a tier. There's a tier column, and all of the columns in the player table are actually sortable. So you can sort it in descending order and just pick the guys that play tier eights. You can play the riskier guys who are in tier sixes usually, but it will sort it out for you.
Okay. And just in general, do you have any kind of tips for people when they're choosing tanks? Obviously, you mentioned picking people who play tier 8s more often is good. Is there any kind of other kind of tips?
I do. One of the things that gets most overlooked is a lot of people don't realize that uh, you should really not just be picking the player, but picking the matchup. A matchup that goes to 9 battles is going to have 9 battles worth of scores, whereas a matchup that is only that's going to be over in 5 is only going to have 5 battles worth of scores. So you almost can get double the score by picking a matchup that's going to be a hard fought one into overtime than one that's going to be over right away.
That is true. I did have Lamp last night, and they went in overtime, and they got me a lot of points. So
Yeah, I made a couple mistakes.
it does make sense. And lastly, is there any way for players or fans to get a hold of you to give you feedback or offer suggestions as to what they want to see in Fantasy League?
Yeah, actually, just yesterday I posted a survey that trying to get feedback from different all the different players. Obviously, we had a ton of new players this season. Um, they can first of all answer the regular feedback questions, but also there's a space for you to provide ideas that you might have to make the league better. A lot of features that I've gotten in the past are derived from player feedback. So it's a very valuable resource to get people to answer these questions for me. And then the feedback's not only limited to when the survey is active, it's also, year round. You can just click the help section and put in a ticket, and say, hey, I have an idea. Let's see if we can do this. Or, if somebody sees a bug or something, you can report it that way.
Well, that's good. Well, thank you very much for joining me, Hypnotic, and giving us a bit of a look behind the curtain as to how Fantasy League goes.
And thank you.